Last week, the Trump administration quietly ordered hospitals to bypass the CDC and to now send COVID-19 data to the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, the New York Times first broke this story, and on Tuesday reported that the HHS database was now positioned to collect daily COVID-19 information from hospitals, and also noted that that information is not open to the public. So now it's going to a place where people will not be able to access that COVID-19 data unless they had gotten approval from the administration. And so the New York Times notes that that could affect the work of researchers, modelers, and health officials who rely on CDC data in order to make projections and crucial decisions when it comes to COVID-19. So again, normally the CDC, they receive that information from hospitals and they release it to the public, and they allow researchers to use that data. But under the Trump order, they're not required to do that. Oh, great. So now the administration's new directive came in the form of a document that was posted online by HHS, headed up by Alex Azar. That's Donald Trump's appointee. As of July 15th, 2020, hospitals should no longer report the COVID-19 information in this document to the National Healthcare Safety Network site. That's, of course, refers to the CDC's data gathering system. Now, what would be the benefit of making that change? Well, now the administration says, well, we're just streamlining the information. That's all we're doing. We're going to streamline it, and it's going to make it more efficient. It's going to make it better. But wait a minute. I don't believe you. I'm not buying this garbage whatsoever. To me, it seems like putting it under the domain of a political appointee at HHS and then making it so the data does not have to be public seems like an effort to hide the numbers. Just saying. Now, HHS said that going forward, hospitals should report detailed information on a daily basis directly to their new centralized system, which is managed by Teletracking, a health data firm with headquarters in Pittsburgh. So that is a private health data firm, by the way. So instead of going to the CDC, it's going to a private corporation. Awesome. That's fantastic. Great. Now, HHS spokesperson Michael Caputo confirmed in a statement to NBC that the CDC will no longer control coronavirus data collection, but said the agency will still participate in the process. So when you look at the framing and the phrasing that they're using, the CDC is not going to control the information. Well, that means you're going to control the information. Again, that's Caputo and Alex Azar are Trump's political appointees. So you're basically putting it under the auspices of people that directly report to Donald Trump. And their jobs are also on the line when it comes to Donald Trump, right? Or he can make it so that they don't have their jobs anymore. Fascinating. So there's, again, that's the problem, right? Coronavirus has become a political issue. Remember, you've got Donald Trump, you got the president saying that we should have less testing, that he doesn't like testing because it turns out the more that you test, the higher the numbers of people infected with coronavirus. Now, I don't know if the idiot looks at it and says, well, obviously more testing means more positives, and that's bad, right? Or he's just saying like, well, I know it's bad, and I know that there are more people getting sick, but I just want to hide the numbers politically. Again, he's a stupid person. So maybe he thinks somehow if we don't test, that means that there's not any additional coronavirus cases. Again, he's a stupid person. So I don't know for sure. With any other president, even with George W. Bush, like I didn't think he was that stupid. Donald Trump, I don't know. I just don't know. So at the same time, since we know the president is openly saying, well, I don't want the numbers to get bigger, well, then how can we trust the HHS to actually report the numbers? I mean, right now we rely on the CDC's numbers, which are public. Making this change is super, super unsettling. And there's a lot of officials that are basically echoing that statement. For example, Dr. Nicole Lurie. Now, she served under President Barack Obama's HHS and told the Times that centralizing control of all data under the umbrella of an inherently political apparatus is dangerous and also breeds distrust. It appears to cut off the ability of agencies like CDC to do its basic job. Well, of course. Wouldn't that be the point? I mean, that seems to be the point here. Yes, to make it so it's harder to do their job so that the president does not look bad when bad numbers are reported. That doesn't mean that there's less coronavirus cases happening. It's just that we're not going to be able to know about it. So they're operating by, well, if you don't see that it's happening, then it's not happening. Look at that. Now reelect me. I mean, this is sick and disgusting. So now, administration officials, while they portrayed this order as part of an attempt to streamline, health experts have been alarmed by the move, given Trump's public attacks on the CDC and complaints about how the recent surge in coronavirus makes us look bad. Dr. Eric Feigl-Ding, who's an epidemiologist, says this makes him speechless. He said the Trump White House is now muzzling, bypassing, and kneecapping the CDC. No other way to spin this. Dr. Leana Wen, visiting professor at the Milken Institute of Public Health at George Washington University, said in an interview on MSNBC late on Tuesday that the decision to cut the CDC off from crucial COVID-19 patient data could undermine the U.S. response to the pandemic as infections surge across the nation. Well, that is the last thing that we should be doing. Why are we undermining ourselves? Or I should say, why are we allowing the government to undermine us? Because we are the ones that are affected here. I mean, it's amazing how corrupt and criminal this entire administration is. Now, the CDC, this is according to Wen, is supposed to analyze data coming from different regions of the country. I'm deeply concerned about what we've seen with the attacks on science and public health in recent days, because public health hinges on public trust. And when politicians, including the top public official, the elected official of our country, President Trump, start attacking public health, it really undermines all of our local, state, and federal response to this pandemic. But understand that, like, undermining science and the public trust in government and media, as well as the sciences and education, that is the Republican goal. Now, Donald Trump doesn't have an overall ideology. I've told you this before, right? The only governing philosophy of Donald Trump is, how does it help Donald Trump? How does doing this help Donald Trump? Now, in this case, basically hiding the data makes Donald Trump look better. Looks like he's more competent. Looks like he's stopping coronavirus. And so that looks good for him. For the Republicans, it's, I guess, more sinister, right? Because they generally don't believe in the science. It contradicts their religious worldview in some cases. And I'm not saying, of course, that all religions or all religious people do this. It's just there is a fervent section of the religious right that tries to be immune to all facts. Now, that said, they're definitely not immune to this virus. And so it's going to affect people. It's going to hurt people in the long run. And that's why it's absolutely dangerous. And again, Donald Trump himself has, because this virus has proved him wrong plenty of times. Remember, he said it'd be going away by the summer. Guess what? It's still actually here. And he was even bragging about how the United States has few deaths. Oh, look at the other countries. They suck so much. In America, we barely have any deaths. And then, well, now we have 137,000. That's deaths, 4 million cases in this country. And so we actually lead the world in coronavirus cases and deaths. And this is without adequate testing, which we still do not have. I mean, look at Florida. Their cases are exploding. You've got Texas, Arizona. Florida, gigantic hotspots. And this is all a result of Donald Trump and the rest of the right wing, including Fox News and media, that are downplaying this virus. And look, I don't know how many times I've heard misinformation like, oh, it's just a flu. Don't worry about it. Really, it's not a flu. Okay, it's not. This is not the same as the common cold. It's not the same as the common influenza. It's not. Oh, but it's got a 99.7% survival rate. No, it doesn't. No, and actually, the mortality rate is actually about 4%. That is way higher than the flu and the common cold. That's disastrous. And not only that, but look, if you contract coronavirus and survive, which most people do, right? Well, a lot of people who have survived have reported lasting damage to their lungs, to their heart. They've even suffered strokes, neurological damage. And so you have that happens as well. That doesn't get talked about enough. And so it's a nasty virus. And when you downplay this, and when you also try to restrict the data on who is infected and how many people are infected, the big hotspots in the country, well, that's going to lead to even more death and destruction. However, I think they're going to use these inaccurate numbers now, since they're not going to have to be reported by the CDC, and instead be hidden and therefore more easily manipulated. That's going to lead to the right-wing narrative of, why don't we just open up the country now? We've beaten coronavirus, open up the country, open up the economy, send the kids back to school, full well knowing that we do not have a handle on this virus. And now you're putting all these people in danger, and it's going to lead to a massive loss of life in this country. And it's all for political reasons, by the way. And interestingly enough, that's exactly what the right wing says about this. Oh, the Democrats just want to keep the country closed, and they're talking about this virus. It's all just media hype, and it's all just political. To take down Donald Trump. No, it's not. That is absolute projection. They are masters of it. And here's the thing about that, right? If we had a Democratic president right now during the age of coronavirus, you don't think that the right wing would be like, I can't believe this Democratic president would allow so many deaths under coronavirus. Oh my God, horrible. In fact, they did that to Obama, for example. They criticized him for Ebola, for the several deaths that happened here, with the Ebola virus, and also with swine flu. By the way, 200,000 people died globally from H1N1, swine flu. The United States alone with coronavirus will pass that very, very soon. And of course, the Republicans would scream and howl about this, about, oh, I can't believe the Democratic administration would fail so much. We must now launch 50 investigations into it. It's all political to them. It's all political to them, all a way to try to get power. It's amazing. Now, look, another, I guess, example of that is, right, where you had gigantic protests in places like, for example, Michigan, against a Democratic governor for doing basically the same things as some Republican governors. And they did not have massive protests that included people, walking around with their guns and the Proud Boys and all that stuff, trying to, basically intimidate the administration into opening up the state. Hey, who's actually has the best coronavirus response in the country? The fewest cases? Michigan, under Gretchen Whitmer. The same. We actually did what was necessary, and we're reaping the benefits from it. Rest of the country needs to get their asses in gear. So, that said, let me give one more quote here. This is from, four former CDC directors. And this was in a Washington Post op-ed on Tuesday. And they said that, quote, No president ever politicized the CDC science in the way that Donald Trump has. Trying to fight this pandemic while subverting the scientific expertise is like fighting blindfolded. It is not too late to give the CDC its proper role in guiding this response, but the clock is ticking. These former CDC directors were Tom Frieden, Jeffrey Copeland, David Satcher, and Richard Besser. And in a column for Esquire on Tuesday, Charles Pierce urged hospitals to ignore Trump's directive and, quote, send the data to the CDC anyway, writing, "It's time for hundreds of little rebellions." You know what? I'm not against that idea. We might have to because lives are literally on the line. Because the president and his followers have decided that reality is inconvenient to them, inconvenient to their political aspirations, and therefore the bad numbers about coronavirus must be suppressed. They are not politically correct. This is exactly what political correctness is, by the way. This does not look good for the politicians and for the administration, so we're going to change it, we're going to manipulate it, and we're going to give out, politically correct answers. Like Donald Trump is doing great on coronavirus. We're doing the most testing in the world, right? We're doing the best. All the other information is fake news. No, that exactly is political correctness, and the administration is engaging in it right now. We need to fight against that in order to save people's lives. And also, if we want to actually be able to reopen the country someday, and resume business and get people back to work and get people back to some semblance of a normal life, then we're going to have to find some way to get around Donald Trump and his ignorant followers and have people actually be able to see the truth. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.